I really appreciate Andrew Kelly. I'm very curious what they have to say here because it looks like we got Loris and Kelly writing on this one. So bounties damage open source projects. If I'm not mistaken, there was just a $5,000 bounty for something to do with Zig and Wasm. All right, so here we go. Wasmer just offered a $5,000 reward for the first developer that adds support for Wasm WasX in the Zig ecosystem. Okay, so I assume this is what's spawning this article, which is very, very interesting because in some sense, even without reading Andrew Kelly's comments and all that, I can see the benefit. The benefit being you get people who can get excited, who are motivated to contribute, who can come in and actually be able to not only get paid for what they do, right? Because that's a big complaint about open source is that you don't get paid for this kind of work. And so this is like one opportunity to bring in value so that someone can actually say they can, make more money or live off of open support. So that's nice, right? That's a nice moment. And so I can totally buy that one. I think the downside, without even reading this yet, is that you also get a bunch of people who don't necessarily care about the ecosystem or the project, really have any of it best in mind. So maybe you get a ton of lower quality contributions trying to rush in to get the money, and it becomes like a race, probably causes a bunch of drama, probably causes a whole bunch of issues. That's kind of like how I see probably where this is going to go. I don't know. It's a curious thing, so let's find out. All right, please don't use bounties to incentivize Zig development. Okay, this blog post got inspired by the GitHub issue a few days ago. Right here. Okay, here's some reasons why we believe bounties are a poor form of sponsorship when it comes to software development. Bounties foster competition at the expense of cooperation. That's an extremely fair take. That's an extremely fair take right there, which is that you don't, like, if there's one $5,000 bounty and you and somebody you don't know are both pretty close to getting something done, you won't collaborate to get the best solution. You would fight against each other, trying to be the first person and hide your solution, whatever it is. I think that's an extremely, extremely fair take right there. But one thing it does do, which isn't quite here, which is if you're not fully involved on the project on the getting paid side, you pretty much are guaranteed a life of never getting anything in that kind of sense. So maybe there's that. I think TJ would probably have a pretty interesting take on this. TJ, do you want to come jump on? All right, so hey, TJ, you're our core maintainer of NeoVim. You've worked in open source quite a bit. You've done a lot of stuff with SourceGraph. I assume there's some open source stuff with that. You've even been paid, sponsored for a full month of open source work. So you do have at least some good idea of what's going on here.
Yeah, and sorry, I do have to admit, I pre-watched this article already. I've already read it, so...
Okay, well, you processed your thoughts. That could be good. You could help guide me from not getting canceled.
Imagine putting a video out where you've already processed the thoughts. Anyways, what were you wondering?
It's a mistake. You know what?
See you guys.
It's a mistake. Wait, dang it, wrong one. It's a mistake. TJ's our streamer.
You kicked yourself out.
I know, I kicked myself out.
This is my stream now.
All right, people are saying, TJ, your voice is a little bit lower. I made it a little bit louder. Okay, so
maybe they're just saying my voice is lower.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a good call. All right, so let's go with point one. Bounties foster competition at the expense of cooperation. How do you feel about this? I think that I'm just going to give you my quick one, which is that there's a certain price level I think that exists that perhaps that can happen at. But I can also see that there's some nice level of many small bounties in which could still foster communication and collaboration as opposed to competition. If you're earning $50 a bug and there's hundreds of bugs and you're just like, hey, what do you think about, like, to me, that just seems like a more collaborative way. Whereas one big one is, it's kind of all in on this one thing. And so you're kind of meant to keep your cards close to your chest. What do you think?
I would say it depends who's hosting the bounty. One of the things is like, if an extra, so you have a project like Zig, right? There's a lot of design space to like solve the problems, right? It's not just like, oh, I have this TypeScript library and it doesn't run on Windows or something like that, right?
Okay.
Like, okay. That's a clear, like the clear solution is it should act just the same on both systems, right?
Yeah.
Like for Zig, the way that you would solve like WasX is not like a clear 1, 2, 3 steps, right? So if you have someone outside of the Zig community or like the Zig leadership team posting a bounty, it makes that person like not want like they're not going to want to cooperate with Zig, right? Because they're like, well, I want to be the one that gets the bounty and all this stuff, right? Like a sufficient enough bounty to actually make someone want to do it probably like makes them not want to collaborate with other people. Like in these kinds of spaces, I agree with you that like suppose you have a project where you have a lot of these little bugs and your primary sort of like blocker is literally time, right?
Yeah.
And you for some reason have, you know, like $20,000 or something that like, oh, someone sent us this to like do bounties, and you're the one as the project maintainer like posting that these can get money for fixing. That feels a lot different than like an external thing is like exerting their force on the project.
Yeah, they're kind
like,
of steering the focus of Zig by putting in money. I can see that's a very valid take. Because maybe Zig has a different direction it's currently focused on, and now you're kind of diverting resources. People are abandoning their current work, or things maybe aren't happening the way you want them to happen. Yeah, that's a totally fair take.
Like from an outsider's perspective, looking into Zig, like Andrew Kelly seems to have a very like firm handle on what he wants to do and sort of like ordering of those things. And I think like most people just have no experience and or like I don't know, like political capital, or I don't know what you would want to say, like credibility, I guess, of being able to prove that they can also do that, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
like,
fair. That's fair.
I don't just trust a random person to guide Zig compared to Andrew Kelly.
He's been doing it for many years and actually built quite a successful piece of software. So yes, it does appear that he's very talented.
When you think about how successful Zig is, I think you have to give a lot of credit, right?
Yeah.
To Andrew Kelly. And so sort of like other people putting this external pressure, having people fight instead of like working together, because it is really complicated. Like for $5,000 or whatever, right? If someone like helps you, should you send them a couple $100 of that bounty, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Those are really
it's a very classic. It's a very classic problem here, right? It's almost like the prisoner conundrum kind of going on, except for there's a bounty, right? How much information do you wish to give out because it could cause issues? It's very interesting. Okay. Don't, by the way, TJ, do not get distracted by any cars arguments or anything like that. I want to stay focused on this one.
Chat's just saying I haven't mentioned OCaml, by the way.
By the way, you like OCaml, right?
Yeah, I do. It's very fun.
As bounties are utterly simplistic way of dealing with business management side of creating software. Instead of scouting for suitable candidates, you are letting Battle Royale dynamics pick a winner for you at the expense of everybody who's going to lose the competition. So again, I personally would say that this makes more sense in these one-time, really large items. But if you had, again, 200 bugs, $50 each, I don't think that. I think this is maybe a different kind of thing, and probably what you're saying. If you had Zig Foundation do it versus Wazimer guy do it,
right? So and also like it doesn't necessarily get you the best person to solve it. It gets you the person that can solve it the fastest.
True.
Right. So like that's this idea of the suitable candidate, right? Where like maybe it would actually be better to wait 3 more months and someone gets unblocked from this and now they get to work on that. Right. So
that's fair. That's a really fair take, because there's a lot of problems down the road that may crop up due to a certain implementation over another one.
Yes. This is software, right? So you would prefer to find like the best person and then the best solution instead of like whatever one's fastest. I think we can all sort of agree. Like if we just did like our day job for this and your manager was just like, hey, anybody who finishes this first, that they get paid and nobody else does, you'd be like, I don't know that that's really gonna, foster the best situation for us to solve technical problems.
All of a sudden, I hate my coworkers.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. Instead of creating a clear contract where you take some risk, you implicitly put the entirety of the risk on the contestants. Okay. Partial solutions don't get any payout. Yeah, that's where the collaboration probably would you do that. Instead of allocating time and resources to proper due diligence.
Well, wait, before we go on the next one, that's also saying like, suppose you find out that it doesn't work, then the company gets off scot-free and that person just wasted like 3 weeks or something.
Yep.
Right?
Yes, that's true. And someone else can take their partial solution and get the payout without any requirements or any linking to prior credit effectively.
Yeah, but also like So suppose you get 80% of the way and it like kind of does what they want. Like maybe it would be enough to get the bounty or whatever, but Andrew Kelly, doesn't want to put it in Zig. You're going to be like really upset, right? So you're going to be like pushing super, super hard to get that put in, right? So this is where like you're feeling all the risk as the solver, right? That like, oh, I just spent 80 hours on this and I'm going to get $0.
Yes, because Zig won't even accept the thing. And you're just like,
right.
Come on.
Depending on the bounty or whatever it is, right? But so there's some like, oh, that's and to be clear, like, I don't think Andrew is saying, bounty should be illegal. He's asking them not to do it for Zig. They think Zig's not well suited for this problem. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no,
they're just giving
I think
reasons
that's fair.
why they think it's going to lead to perverse outcomes.
Yeah, no, that's also fair. And he might even do bounties himself for Zig. But like you said, it's a difference of who's controlling the bounties and the narrative, really, of Zig.
Yeah.
Instead of allocating time and resources to proper due diligence, you instead penalize any form of thoughtfulness in favor of reckless action. Absolutely.
Yep.
Right? A solution that just needs to pass the test suite, right? Instead of planning for the full cycle of software, which includes maintenance, you end up with quickly a bit-rotting artifact that is of no practical use to anybody.
Nice.
Maybe that it's a little harsh on that one because it sounds like there would be practical use if it fits some sort of thing, but you don't have the maintainer. You don't have the person that's continuing to make it work, and then it does fall behind and does become bit rot that eventually is useless because it's so far out of date. Instead of spreading unease to all people involved, it would be preferable you instead learned how to do business properly.
Oh my God, I forgot that this line was in here.
I mean, that's an intense one. I don't necessarily disagree with it because I don't think the intentions of Wazimer was bad, and I think it was something that probably made people excited, and he thought he's probably doing something good, right? Just charitable reading the situation is, we have some money, we're a startup, we really want this. Here, let's just help make people excited about it. But reality doesn't look that way, and so now it probably is poor business as well. And so now no one's happy with the outcome of this.
Mm-hmm.
On projects less radical than Zig, I'm not sure what radical means other than like radical in this situation.
Dude, Zig's totally radical.
It's totally rads, bro. You might also put pressure on development team to accept the winning submission, which, given the above, will probably not be the most well thought out and maintainable solution. Fair. We also have a word about bug bounties too.
They're basically saying, hey, Zig's not going to just accept something because of this, but because we actually know what we want, but less people that's not true of every project, right? Like if you get a well thought out PR from like some amount of well thought out, right, that passes tests and has all this stuff and it just shows up on your doorstep, that's like, it's going to be very hard to say no. This is like a super common problem in OSS is the like maintainer doesn't have a vision of what the project should be, and so they accept when other people do stuff instead of being like, honestly, like very pedantic even about really small stuff. On NeoVim, we have literally a list, you can read it in the help dev-naming, of how to name every kind of function or different things in the API, and like what verbs you're allowed to use and what names you're allowed to, right? And
I've actually said I don't like them, but I understand them. Like I've said that more than once, that I'm not a huge fan of some of those things because I like the more namespace approach. But at the end of the day, it actually makes sense. Like it actually helps me reason about it in a more complete way, and I discover new methods because I generally get the idea of how you've chosen these names.
Right. And so sometimes, like in this case, it's
Wait,
also
you work on
sometimes
NeoVim?
I'm on NeoVim Core, by the way. I mean, Telescope, by the way.
Okay, keep going.
Just sometimes from an outside perspective, those things like aren't clear. You could easily imagine creating some bounty that's going to like go against something that you have as the vision, and that's going to create a lot of problems, especially if from this, it sounds like there was no sort of like ahead of time chatting with the Zig people about doing this, right?
And I think that could have been, if that would have been done, A, you would have known not to do it, or B, you could have done it, but with a more thought through process. Maybe several milestones could have been made, $500 for the person that, spikes this out and gives a clear, and then made a bunch of little ones, along the way. I don't know. There could have been an alternative that would have been more healthy. All right.
Right.
While we do understand that continued exposure to venture capital might have caused some to build an appreciation for endless rat racing, we kindly request that you keep unwarranted hustling away from the Zig community.
I forgot this line.
We are not only building free open source software, but most importantly, we are building software you can love. And this can be only done by employing well-designed business management processes.
That one I'm not as like I don't think that's the only way that you can possibly make software that people can love. I think lots of people like lots of different pieces of software. Like a lot of people even like, Google Docs, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I
they
like
find
Google
it
Docs.
really nice. Yeah, it's like actually pretty good, like for what it is, and like hopefully it's still here in 6 months. You never know.
Yeah, not with Google, but I get what you're saying.
But so like I enjoy using that when I have to, I guess, compared to other solutions, and so I think it's a little stronger stance than I would take. I'm willing to say that it's possible to make software that people can love without it being open and free and without well-designed business management. But
yeah, there's this thing that keeps cropping
saying.
up, and I saw it with the Node versus Bun drama as well, which is one of the arguments is this open process for change, and it's free and open source, and that's why it's good. And it's just like, that's not a good definition of why something is good or bad. Like a lot of people are excited about Bun because it solves a bunch of problems, and it's also venture capital backed. That can be a good thing. Like it can just simply be a good thing to have venture capital. But I do agree that it does cause
Dax's point about actually. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I do understand this one, the endless rat racing, where maybe the WASMer person is under pressure to release something that involves, WASM in relation to their new standard WASX or whatever it was called, in which is causing him to put pressure on this, which is causing this rat race, which is causing all these problems. And so I get the critique. So what were we saying about Dax? I do love Dax and his base take.
Just Dax's point about, like, Jared actually can keep pushing through on Bun because he doesn't have to worry about where he's going to get his paycheck for tomorrow, right? Like, at some point they're going to have to make money, and that does change maybe how you're going to do some things. But also it's possible that Bun would have never come into existence without the VC, right? So there is some difficulty there in that. Yeah.
All right, we do believe, so a word about bug bounties. We do believe bug bounties, like the one offered by Tiger Beetle, can be a virtuous way of sponsoring development since they are focused on a discovery aspect of software defects. Yes, it is possible for different people to independently discover the same bug, but that's an unlucky coincidence, not a structural aspect of a resulting system. I honestly...
Yeah, so I checked this one out, and this is more like Tiger Beetle was looking, I think, for people to try and... find a way to break this thing.
Oh, okay. So this was like more like you break it, we give you something.
Yeah, that's so I don't 100% understand everything about it, but that's my understanding of what this is, which is definitely very different. The push.
It can result in the same thing, though.
Yes, but the difference, I think, is that when you find an error, that error actually exists. Right?
Yes.
But when you're putting something and you're pushing some design constraint or direction change onto a project, it doesn't have to be that way.
Correct.
Right? So those are sort of, I think there's a very big difference about trying to exert direction of a project via bug bounties versus making sure that, your project actually is able to do what it says and paying and compensating people for that work, right?
Yeah.
And bug bounties do seem like a pretty reasonable way to make that happen.
The thing is I don't like the term virtuous in this because it's a different application. It makes software more resilient as opposed to adding new features, which could be unresilient. But it causes the exact same thing, right? You have unlucky coincidence of finding bugs. You're less likely to work for somebody else as those bug bounties get larger, right? There's a lot of things. You get all the same effects. Just not
some of the same some of the same problems listed above do seem like they would apply to bug bounties.
So I don't feel like it's somehow more virtuous. I think that it's just simply better for software. It's probably a better way of putting it. It's better for the direction of software because you can find critical bugs that you would not have found otherwise because it's just simply a time in, time out problem. You just have to look meticulously to find it.
The other thing too is if you think about incentives of the system, right? if you find a critical bug in a system, you are incentivized to take advantage of that. Right? Like that's the incentive.
Yeah.
Obviously, like hopefully you have,
This is for like
morality and other
hacker
things.
type thing, right? Yeah.
Right. But like if you found one, you're incentivized not to. So they're trying to create like a different incentive to change it so that you reveal that thing and then users aren't hurt, right? So that seems like an objective like win. That's good. I also don't necessarily love virtuous, but that's fine. Like I get what they're trying to say about it. They're trying to say like it's a good way of doing it, I guess. Maybe they really mean something in particular by using virtuous. I don't know.
Yep. Let's see. Click that. If you're interested in investing in the Zig ecosystem, we're happy to chat with you and give you all the necessary insight, both when it comes to the project's roadmap and in terms of publicizing the opportunity within the community to help you find a suitable candidate. We do expect that you treat your collaborators with respect they deserve. For more info, talk to Loris, which, by the way, I believe he streams Zig pretty regularly, right?
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Christoph would be his name on Twitch.
That's true. Which always throws me off.
It does throw me off because every time I read this, I do that. I have a map in my head built.
There's three like levels of checking. It's like reading very deeply nested Java classes.
It's like reading Wheel of Time and trying to remember what this character did because there is only 2,800
unique
characters.
Like watching Wheel of Time, seeing the person's name, trying to connect that to some character that doesn't match at all from the books. And you're trying to figure out how does this make sense.
You're like, it's a Gleeman. Introduced late in the show. Probably Tom Marilyn from the beginning of the show. You're
never going to meet him again, though. Good luck. See ya.
Anyways, all right, that was great. I really like this. My only overall thing, and I've seen this a lot lately, is this continuous like bashing on VC and the virtuousness of FOSS. I don't think they're separate, but overall, I think this is a really good kind of reminder that working with people creating software is a much better way than we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, just being too excited and not thinking through your actions and what the consequences could do.
Yeah. I mean, I think like it's pretty easy to think that doing a doing like a bounty for a feature is really nice because you're trying to pay people to do the work instead of just like taking advantage of them. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think that even if that's not how I would do it, right? Like, I can see why people would think that that's good. So if you compare it to like how we do it for NeoVim, is that basically the only way that you can get paid for working on NeoVim is if you're a long time contributor, and then you have a chance to work on NeoVim full time for at least a month. So like, and we generally have some idea of like what you're going to try and accomplish over that month, right? Like I've done it twice. One for rewriting a bunch of the diagnostics and like LSP stuff inside of NeoVim so that we could have sort of this way that people could like configure, because before our like first version, you had to basically do a ton of copying and pasting to get anything working, right?
Yeah.
And then the second one was when I did like an exploratory project to see if we could transpile Vim 9 script.
I remember that one. You streamed a lot of that one. Yep. That was super cool. That was a super cool project.
Yeah. And I mean, that was pretty much because no one wanted to do that and it was going to take a ton of time. And I was like, well, I'll do it. I have like some time I can take off for a month, but I just wouldn't have done it if I wasn't getting paid at all. Right. Because I was like, I have other stuff that would be more fun than like learning Vim 9 script. Like, I'm a top expert in Vim 9 script.
You are. But that's the thing is that even people go, oh, well, building a compiler and getting paid for that had to be super cool. It's like, it is cool to an afternoon extent and maybe 2 afternoon extents. But when you're in the thick of it and you're having like a singular token issue that's leading to all these offsets and building out all these tests, it becomes very unfun fast. 80% is awesome.
Right. So anyway, and like, I wouldn't have taken full time to do it, right? Like I took time off and did a bunch of stuff so that I could do it. So I really like that kind of model where it's possible, right? Because then you're basically like getting a chance to reward contributors. We've had people be able to work on NeoVim full time that like would not be able to afford working on NeoVim otherwise. Like they're not like independently wealthy in such a way that they could take time off or whatever, right? And we're able to like pay them to do that, right? Which is awesome to get to do. And there's been contributors that have gotten to do that because of that, right? But we've basically, like, there was some bounty work and some stuff at the beginning of NeoVim, but we've long since like stopped that. I think basically for very similar reasons to those listed in Zig.
Okay.
And I think sponsoring like people's work is much more like effective way to drive something forward in a sustainable way than trying to like put a bunch of random carrots attached to different issues, especially without conversations with the people actually managing the vision and direction of the project.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like that take. I think that's pretty good. Parasocial Fix says, how do you find those people? You know, when it comes to a lot of these open source larger projects, people just naturally gravitate towards it that are interested. I mean, I don't think NeoVim is out there advertising they need devs. There's probably plenty of people that are attempting to make some sort of small change that there's a lot of guidance for, and those who just, you know, find it a labor of love continue on, and then they get the opportunity to have something nice. Like you picked it because you enjoyed the project, and then you eventually got paid for it. And probably you'll never get paid enough for the time you spent on it. But you still got something out of it.
My hourly wage is very bad.
It's not good. It's not something you'd write home about, but it's pretty cool. So, you know, you got to be happy about that.
Yeah, I think the other thing about like a style like what NeoVim has is it's very easy to not let money like affect regular contributions and stuff like that. Like the distinction is very, very clear and obvious, right? Where you basically say, hey, like you've earned a lot of credibility in this community and you have some big project that you want to do. We can sponsor that work for a set amount of time. That's like very clear, and it doesn't make it sort of this weird thing where now all of a sudden you feel like you should be getting money all of the time, right? Which that's really complicates how a project works.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. Okay, I think we all agree with this. Hey, TJ, you stream, right?
I do.
When are you going to release a YouTube video? When are you going to release a YouTube video?
Holy cow, good question. I think I'm gonna record my talk that I did at Jane Street pretty soon, and I'll upload that.
Okay, I think that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah. Can I live react to it?
About NeoVim, by the way. Yeah, you can react to it. It'll be kind of long. It'll be too long for you to
I'm not
watch. I think. Yeah, maybe I can make a YouTube short that you can react to.
I like it. All right, hey, take care, TJ. I appreciate that.
Sweet. Yep. See you, chat. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye. I like that one. I actually like that a lot. Hey, the name is OSS is pretty dang complicated, you know? You know, like you can't, people want to be paid for their time, but it's hard to pay people for the time, and then you have to go through a series of hoops and difficult things to make people get paid for the time, and it's really just non-trivial. It's the difficulty of trying to run any single company, but it's mostly free. Again.